Hey, Steve Stine from Guitar Zoom here. Thank you so much for joining me. Today what we're going to be doing is looking at some ideas that you can use for your guitar solos. And today's topic is going to be thinking about dynamics and how to change up your dynamics. There's a lot of different ways that you can do this. One thing that I try and suggest to people is always think opposing sides, like low, high, fast, slow. Okay, loud, soft, play a lot, don't play at all, that sort of thing. You're always looking for contrast in your dynamics. So if you think about it when I'm playing, now I could take my volume and turn it all the way up. You see? But what I can do is when I'm soloing, I could use that. But if I was to just play softer, or maybe even roll my volume back a little bit, I get a different dynamic. Okay, I might even choose a different pickup, right? Right now I'm on my bridge pickup, but I might maybe go to a single coil or and I can use all of those at the same time. I could maybe use a single coil pickup, pick a little softer, roll my volume back a little bit. Right? And then if I need to, add a little dynamic to it. You know what I find a lot is when students find jam tracks, for instance, out on YouTube or whatever, you find a jam track that you really like, and maybe that jam track is really dynamic. I tend to use a lot of backing tracks by a company called Elevated Backing Tracks. I love their stuff. But oftentimes their tracks are very dynamic. So the beginning might be really, really, really mellow. Then it gets really heavy, and then it goes mellow again, which is a pretty traditional thing. So instead of thinking about always changing my presets, right, with a pedal or something like that, I try and control a lot of it with the way I play and the options I have with the guitar itself. Now, I'm not saying you can't use patch changes or something. You certainly can, whatever works for you. But if the song starts off kind of mellow, that's when, I might roll this back, kind of find the sound I'm looking for. If I roll back a little bit and I stay on this bridge position, it tends to sound a bit nasally. But if I go into a single coil, I get more of that kind of sound. You see? And then let's say it kicks in a little bit more on the next part. So that's where maybe I'll go up to my neck position, bring that volume up, have some good melody happening. You see? So just thinking about that as one of your dynamics is the ability of being able to pick softer versus, digging in a bit more with your guitar pick, changing your volume, and changing your pick selector. And you could use all three of those in conjunction with each other. Okay, another one that I try and talk about a lot is low and high. When you first start off a solo, again, it's entirely up to you and it depends on the circumstance, but oftentimes you might start a little more mellow. Okay, now let's switch to the key of E minor just for this next example. So if I go to E minor, and I kind of start in what I'll call the gut of the guitar here, it's like I'm kind of speaking, right? Down here it gets a little bit more like I'm talking. And then here is a little bit more like I'm singing. Now if I move up, now I'm singing quite lively, right? And if I move up in here, then it's kind of like I'm screaming. So I've always tried to use sort of the analogy that if you think of the bottom half of the guitar as sort of whispering, and then you're talking, and then you're singing, and then you're singing loudly or screaming as you move up here. And you can even use different, thicknesses of string as kind of that analogy too. It doesn't just have to be where you are on the guitar. And you combine that with the way that you pick and the tone or the volume control and things like that as you play. So when the solo first starts, whether it's a backing track, you're actually on stage or whatever it might be, when it first starts, again, if it needs right out of the gut, big soloing, whatever, sorry. Then you might do something like that. But if it's kind of mellow, you might kind of work into it. Right? Whatever it might be. But thinking about low and high in terms of the way that you're playing on your guitar is another big thing to really kind of focus in on. Another one that I try and talk about a lot is thinking about playing versus not playing, like actually stop playing. Because if you think about the voice, if we're trying to replicate the voice, sometimes it's nice to physically stop playing. And what you're going to notice about my soloing tone is that I've got a bit of delay and reverb on there. And what I love about that is it actually gives me, I shouldn't say gives me, but encourages me to maybe play less here and there, because I can use that to fill the space in between. So when I go to play something, if I go, you see, and really stop playing, you can hear that delay and that reverb fill the space. See? So learning how to have your guitar stop, and I might even need to wait until that delay and reverb is over, and then I'll start again to really get my point across. And so sometimes you play more notes, sometimes you play less notes, that sort of thing. And remember, think of all of that. It's not just a contest of whether you can play fast or you don't want to play fast. It's about energy. It's about power, right? It's about building anticipation. So sometimes when you play something slower and then you follow it up with something that's a little bit faster, it adds energy to whatever it is that you're trying to say on your guitar. Versus just everything being fast or everything being slow. You try and find kind of a happy medium in there. Now you can think of speed as, quarter note to eighth note to 16th note, or just, an impact of how many notes that you're actually playing. Everybody's different that way. But it really does make a difference in the way your solo sounds, okay? Another thing I try and get across with people too when it comes to soloing is think about shaking things up in terms of the scale that you're playing. It doesn't matter whether it's pentatonic or diatonic modes, whatever, wherever you are. Okay. The one thing I always try and get people to understand, that just because you're learning something new up here doesn't mean it's transferring to here. So just because you learn the theory of something doesn't necessarily mean that it's transferring to your fingers. You have to practice that idea over and over and over, that concept, to actually make it something that sounds musical. So it's not just what you know. For me, the bottom line is always your playing ability. It's not whether we can have a big conversation on, how much theory you know. Don't get me wrong, theory is very important, but you've got to be able to apply it logically in a musical sense, right? So when you think about playing, instead of just playing a scale, you try and think about your approach to it. Now, we've already talked about dynamics, we've talked about loud, soft, we've talked about playing more, playing less, that sort of thing. One thing I like to talk about is trying to shake things up. If I was, again, in E minor or whatever scale I'm using here, learning how to kind of make a variety of things happening with your scale, instead of just going, with whatever scale you're using, learning you can throw arpeggio ideas. use a lot of string skipping, jumping over things, right? Just whatever patterns you find interesting. But it sounds more interesting than always just going. Now, that doesn't mean that scalular runs or movements on the fretboard are bad. They're good. But again, think about contrast, dynamic contrast. If you did something that was more scalular, try and break it up by doing something else, whether it's an arpeggio idea, a string skipping idea. For me, it isn't always thinking about arpeggios and string skipping and all of those things as, again, a theoretical concept to begin with. It's not like you have to know all of your arpeggios to play an arpeggio, or you have to understand all of your intervals to play a string skipping idea. Okay, you don't. And again, I'm not saying that those are important to understand. Of course they are. But it still starts with the sound. When you play, you know, trying to make it sound interesting. When you play, that's really what you're looking for. So anyway, hopefully these ideas help you. I've got a guitar course called Guitar Solos that you can check out at guitarzoom.com if you're interested. And anyway, have a great day, practice hard, and keep things going.